Hey guys, I'm back with another video. Today I want to talk about the Sony a7 IV and why I'm actually not excited for it, and why it's probably not worth it for most people that own the Sony a7 IV. Hold on. Which I'm actually recording with right now. Do you see that? This is the kit lens, and from my knowledge and what I saw is that they're making a new kit lens for the Sony a7 IV. But before I get into that, I just want to talk about why I think that the Sony a7 IV is, I don't want to say failure, I just don't think it's that great, and why it's not worth it for most people that have the Sony a7 IV. Number one, the reason why I think that the Sony a7 IV is not a very good buy for most people, the low light performance of the a7 IV is actually worse than the Sony a7 IV, which is bonkers to me. It should at least be the same. Why is it worse? Like, that's so crazy to me. Like, that alone is kind of a reason for me not to even get it, if I was even maybe considering it. Forget about the open gate. The open gate to me is not really a big deal. I think people are just making it a bigger deal than it really is, but the open gate thing is not really that problematic, really. The low light situation in the a7 IV being worse than the a7 IV is enough really to really deter most people, I think, because when you've waited 4 years, shouldn't it be at least the same? And then now it's worse. This makes me think of the time when the Sony a6000 was launched from the Sony Next 6. People were kind of afraid of the noise being worse, right? Because of the megapixel count, and that was higher because the Next 7 and the Next 6, or the NEX 7 and 6, their low light performance was not the same. The 7's was actually noticeably worse because it had 24 megapixels, and then the 6 had 16, so that's why it was worse, because the Next 7 borrowed the same sensor from the Sony a77, I believe, which Sony made DSLRs back then, but now they don't make them anymore. But the point that I'm saying is that was the reason why they were worried about the a6000 having worse low light performance. And then when it actually came out, it was actually better, and then people were shocked because the technology became better, so it even had lower noise with 24 megapixels, and then the Next 6 had worse low light performance at 16. And now it's like you would expect it to be at least the same, if not better, right? But the low light performance on the a7 IV is kind of weird. Like, it's like worse, and I'm like, what the heck, And it did get a little bit sharper, but honestly, all video quality nowadays looks pretty good. Nobody can tell the difference between an a7 IV with a kit lens and my Sony Nex 5R with the kit lens barely, if you look really closely. And that camera is back in 2012 when they made it, so that's the kind of thing that really irks me. The second thing is that it does have 4K 60 uncropped, which is nice. That's kind of a nice thing if you want slow-mo 4K without it being uncropped. I guess that is definitely a nice thing. And then the screen swivel, it has the same as the Sony a7R5, which is really nice. But those two things are not enough, I think, for most people to spend $3,000 freaking dollars on the Sony a7 V when they have the Sony a7 IV, because the jump from the Sony a7 II to the Sony a7 III was big. It was monumental. That camera sold like crazy. Even people that would never spend, or think that they would never spend that much on a camera, but they actually spent it on it, and it was incredible. Even somebody from my work has the Sony A7 III. Like that's how big it is. I don't think that like there was any jump that was as big from the Sony A7 II to the 3 from any other two A7 models. From the 1 to the 2 is actually pretty big because of the IBIS. That's definitely great. And then the material I think that they made the Sony A7 II from was also better, but that was a thing. Although it was missing 4K video recording, I believe that was kind of a like letdown, you know. But yeah, definitely, I just don't think that the Sony A7 V is just worth it for most people. Really, that low light performance thing really gets me, because when you're spending that much money on a full frame camera, one of the things that you really value about full frameness, if like that's a word, is the low light performance. That's definitely what I would definitely be looking for, even if I didn't have even if I did not have a full frame camera, right? One of the things that I'm really critical of is the low light performance. I want a full frame camera that has the best low light performance, or like up there within its class, because that's the kind of area that I really nitpick on, because one of the beauties of the full frame world is that low light performance, if you're spending that much money, starts to become a big concern, and I'm critical of it, because that's one of the reasons why to spend money on a full frame camera. I mean, yes, in general, full frame cameras do better in low light than like other cameras that have smaller sensors. That's a no-brainer, but it depends on the technology as well. I actually remember seeing a video, I think it was the Sony A6500 and then the Sony A7, the first version. The Sony A7 did better in like photos, and that's crazy, you know. I think it was the 6500 or the 6600 that they were actually comparing with, because there were two very different cameras in terms of when they were released, and that goes to show the bigger sensor and the value of it, despite it being, you know, quite a bit older than the Sony A6500. But yeah, definitely those are my own reasons why I think the Sony A7 V is kind of not revolutionary, honestly. Even the Sony A7 IV to the 3 is, I think, a bigger jump. Oh wait, and then the screen quality is actually better on the Sony A7 V. The screen quality is actually better, but the EVF is the same, but the screen quality being nicer is nice, and then the battery life is actually improved upon. I will say that having a bigger battery definitely is nice, because the A7 IV was kind of, you know, they kind of put so much in it that the battery life actually went down from the A7 III, and the A7 III was known to have great battery life with that new battery type. So I don't really get to enjoy it on the Sony A7 IV, because the tech had not really caught up with it, whereas the A7 V, the tech is catching up with the battery life once again, you know, without putting in a new battery because of that new processing chip in there. So that is what I have to say, guys. I don't really think that the Sony A7 V is really not that great in terms of a 4-year upgrade, you know. Like, I'm kind of let down. Just that low light performance baffled me. Like, it's quite noticeably worse too. I was watching a video, so that really just irks me. I kind of expected more from Sony. It's not even about the whole open gate thing. Just, what are they doing, you know? Like, why can't it at least be the same, if like anything, instead of going backwards? I'm just not really impressed with Sony this year. Yeah, I don't know. Some people, they wanted 4K 120 uncropped, but that's a little bit too much. I think the A6700 also has 4K 60 uncropped as well, so like now they match. But whatever, it's just kind of disappointing, like, after waiting that long, you know. And then the R6 can do 4K 120 like uncropped, like I mean, like, Canon is definitely killing it back again, you know. They're definitely catching up, and they're doing a great job, I will say that, with their video. So anyways, that's what I have to say. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you definitely agreed with me, make sure to like this video and definitely subscribe if you have not yet. All right, bye guys.